Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chang Chee and I will start my presentation now. In search of the new grammar of ornamentation of a craft, the first step I've done is to understand the process behind the craft itself. Because for me, the value of the craft lies within the process, and therefore, the formation of the new grammar of ornamentation focuses critically on the making of the craft, all the way from synthesis of the raw material until its very final form, which is the textile. Next, I extracted those elements that are important from the process, and this will become the base of my drawing presentation. And on the right hand side is the mind map that summarizes the whole philosophy of textile making, which I define it as cognition, coordination, and creation. First, cognition is the realization of our own surrounding and comprehend them in a form of ideation. Second, coordination is the cooperation between human and tools to process ideas into craft. And lastly, by combining both cognition and coordination, humans are able to translate anything into man-made craft. And so these are some of the drafts that I've done prior to the final pieces. Last but not least, the final piece was drawn with the depiction of motion of both human and machine that puts idea into form. As you may notice, the drawing started from the top where elements like cocoon, leaf, and butterfly are used to symbolize the source of textile, and continuously reaching the mind and body of the human, and they will undergo a series of morphosis either by human movement or by the mechanical motion, and then finally being released as textile. So the whole idea of the drawing revolve around transition between idea and the craft, which is the motion. Without motion, none can be achieved or created. Therefore, the new ornamentation is formulated with the idea of being interacting with human in the form of motion instead of just being a mere decoration. So the idea behind the design of building element is the redirecting ideas through motion. From the earlier philosophy of craft, textiles are formed in a way that ideas are translated through motion into its final form. But however, with building element, what can we do is that a reverse action of the philosophy, which is from the final object through motion, it will break it down into ideas again that inspire the craftsman or even the visitor. So as motion plays a very important role over here, how I started is by studying the mechanism and also the movement behind the making of the craft, and how can I break them into ideas such as a form of motion, color, light, shadow, or even sound, which can trigger the senses of human, sort of become like a machine that creates. So what I have done next is the breakdown of the anatomy of loom, which is in order to study the mechanism behind it and to see how it can transform into a movable building elements by using all these mechanisms. After the first study on the anatomy of loom, what I proceed with is the exploration of the form making as well as a pattern and also shadow of the craft. So over here, I'm just randomly exploring around to see what can I do, what can I play with the motion, and then from here I already decided to what I want to do later is staircase, because staircase is the place where human will produce the most movement out of all the building elements that I know. So the design of the staircase started by implementing some of the mechanism that I find interesting from the study earlier. So what is the most interesting one is the reed and pedal mechanism that in which when one step on the pedal as circle with the pink color, when one step on the pedal, it will actually pulls up and down of the reed, and it will cause a creation of different patterns. So with this understanding, I also try to apply it on my rail design, where I first lay out the lines of the weaving, and the negative spaces are extracted as pattern. And when both of these patterns overlap on each other, it will produce a different variety of shadows as the light casted through the holes, the gap within the pattern. As for the step, is inspired by the pedal, where when one step on the step, it will depress slightly in order to trigger a pulley action, and the pulley action will actually swing out in and out for the rail design. and then cause the change in the pattern. Over here I have tried to do a mechanism model 1 to 10 scale in order to test out how the motion can run. So this is a GIF that shows how it will move. So every time when I press on the pedal, the thread, it will trigger this motion that pulls it down. And over here is the intersecting pattern that will produce different shadow. Follows up is the design of the final model, which consists of 11 steps. And over here I documented the process, and on the right is some of the view of the model. So how does this building element actually impact the space? So as a person walk up and down of the stair, a series of motion will be triggered and form the change of shadow as well as the sound. And as a craftsman is observing all this change in pattern, they can get inspired through motion, inspired their work in creativity and craft. As for the visitors who come, they can understand, they can grasp the idea behind the textile making process through the mechanism of the staircase. Here are the 2D drawings of the staircase, some of the 3D perspective. Proceed on the site study. I first started with the site narrative, which is a collection of words spoken by the locals in Bangkachao, and their enlightenment and also their frustration towards the current condition. So from the enlightenment part are mostly comments from people who are impressed with the nature and sustainable condition, and also comfortable living in this environment of Bangkachao. As for the frustration part, is mainly coming from people who are dissatisfied with the current conditions, such as they worry about losing the green space to business and also commercial activities, and also the pollution brought over by the tourists and also outsiders, which causes many dump sites over here. And they worry about their ecosystem, and also the natural habitat will die out due to the takeover from the buildings. Next is the site synthesis. So the site synthesis focus on the 4 major issues that I found from the site. So the first is the turmoil of waterway, which is the flood. Because Bangkachao is located right on the river bank, so it's very exposed to problems like flood. So what can we do about it is to raise the houses height by elevating the structure, and to put most of the indoor activities on the higher level instead of the ground floor. And next is that we can construct these green pockets which will hold the flood water before they are released back into the river again. So this can be done through doing agriculture work or even like park system. Next is the rise of garbage, which is the mishandled dump site. So as there are more and more tourists that come over here, there are more garbage produced. So what can we do about this? Instead of just throw them away, we can either recycle them into craft or even in a form of compost if the thing is organic. And next is a place of impermanence. What it means is that people come to Bangkachao pier only to grab bikes and then walk off, go to the park or even for the eatery or the market. So people don't really stay here for long. And the possible approach to this is that to make the activities within the site more fun and more vibrant. Next is the endangered nature, which is the loss of green space. So what can we do about it is by doing replantation at the site, promotes ecotourism, and also to express the importance of preserving nature through education. Then is the site analysis. So the main strength of the site itself is the strong base of visitors, which are the local and also international tourists, and it is located near towards the hotspot nearby the site, such as the park and also the Banamphung market. It is also, because it's a pier, it is also accessible from the waterway and the land, so it can provide more opportunities for access into the site. However, due to the overcrowding of the nature as well as the existing structure within the site, it makes it really hard to view into the site, because as we view on Google Map, we can't really see into the site as well. So it actually hinders people from entering the site. And because it's by the river bank, so wet soil also poses a threat to the building structure, and proper design requires to counter the soil condition over here. So the project intends to combine 3 different elements, which is the agriculture, art and craft as well as the tourism into one, and thus bringing in a very diverse community into the site and form a new experimental ground for different experiences to both the local and also the international tourists. So by having this user engagement, it also form a strong chain of relationship, either social by social or by economic. So this will actually do good to the long-term sustainability of the craft. Lastly is the site program. So the site programmatic strategy focus around supply and demand. So in this case, tourist is the demand and supplies are the agriculture and also crafts. So here by interlacing each of the elements together, I am able to formulate a stable supply chain and also economical circle, which is fundamental to the revival of the traditional craft. So some of the programs that can be allocated in this space is a design and craft workshop, a performing art platform, and gallery for the art and culture part, and continuation of the bicycle rental, which is one existing, and also adding on eatery and also flea market to attract more tourists. As for agriculture is the construction of a silk farm and also orchard that will supply the raw material and the crops to the other function. So over here I've done a simple spatial relationship where the start of the entrance is the flea market, which will attract both the locals and the tourists into the site. And the heart of the center is the performing art platform, which is to display the creativity and also the rich culture of the Bangka. And on the left is the silk farm and also orchards that will be constructed out of the boundary, as there's the empty plot land down on site, and people can actually ride their bike around here.